Welcome to the adventures of self. Conversations with ordinary and extraordinary people as they explore what it means to be self-expressed. Come on in. Join the adventure.
So welcome, Carina Notivoli, to the Adventures of Self.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you on. And we are we're in a seeking and searching sense today. What is we are going to find, and in fact, what it is we are even seeking.
Yeah, that's a question, isn't
it? Yeah, I mean, it's we have this sense that it's like, oh, I've lost my keys. Let me go searching for them. Maybe they're in this drawer or in this place. But we're talking about a sort of a deeper seeking and searching that comes from within somewhere.
Yes.
What you were saying before we get started that you consider yourself a seeker.
I do, yeah.
And do you know what you're seeking?
Yeah, I think I do in a way. I think it is a lot about my own relation to myself, my individuality in relation to the big whole, the big picture. Where am I in this big picture called life and the universe? Who am I in relation to that? And what's my place? What's my task? What am I to do?
What drives you in that?
I think that is, that's a very good question. I think it is something very deep within that is sort of mysterious and very intuitive. It's a question of the heart, I think. I always had that sense of drive in my life, as if there is something speaking from within, taking me to places and in search for meaning, I think.
Yeah, it reminds me of Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, right? He went through the Second World War and the Holocaust and in a concentration camp and really looked at this fundamental question around meaning. And it becomes an individual question and perhaps a larger one for all of us. And it's interesting because I know we're adults, right? So we have things in our lives. We have responsibilities. You have children and jobs and your own health to look after, and we have these things that can take up for some people all of their life, and yet we have this other side of us that, as you say, the heart, that may be seeking and searching, and some people may be in touch with that from a very, very early point in their lives, and others may feel it but not quite know what to do with it.
Yeah. Yes, I think I think I had that always, ever since I was very, very small. And it has been driving me, and also driving me both to adventures and travels and meetings with different people and circumstances, but also like in search for a space where I can have the space to be a bit playful and creative and adventurous. And I have now I find myself in a place in life now where I have actually the time to write a book, for example, and that has been, I think it's this inner drive that has been helping me find my way to this place in a way, because it has been so important for me always to have this space sometimes to just like you talked about in the beginning, like a little bit put the responsibilities aside and really go into that child in relation to the universe.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I think that you say you had it from very early age, and I think I probably did as well. And in my life, I can look back and see how I put that away for quite a long period of time. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to cultivate or entertain it. So I went after lots of other things. I mean, definitely some adventure. I did a lot of traveling, but it had almost a manic quality to it, and then proving myself through work or other socially acceptable metrics. But what you just said right there, I think is really interesting, because from the outside, right, when we look at somebody's Instagram page or somebody's website or a book, and we'll get to your book shortly, but we have this sense, oh, they're capable, they're creative, they have this, and I don't, because we see finished products. And what you talk about there, which I think is really useful as a starting point, is it's about creating a space to play, that we don't necessarily know exactly what's going to come out of that, but providing the space actually allows for creativity to come.
Yes, very much about that, I think, and to really like allow oneself to be so open-minded that one can surprise oneself also. And that's not the easiest thing, but I think to become really in tune with the more deeper, irrational, intuitive sides of oneself, that is the kind of space one has to go to, like being totally open to something that you couldn't even imagine yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's for me where true creativity resides.
Yeah, and I think when you read or listen to people in whatever creative space, that's often what's talked about, is creating an opportunity, creating a space for something that you didn't know was possible to emerge.
Yeah.
And of course that can feel quite scary.
Yeah, definitely.
But allowing, it's like, just to kind of belabor the point, but allowing that space is what, it's kind of paradoxical, because when you go into that space, it's, even though you don't really know what's going to happen, the more you spend time in it, the more comfortable in uncertainty, certainly I become. And it's not about, we have, in our rational mind, we have very linear concepts about what we do and what we get, right? So for instance, if I decide to work out, and to go to the gym and work a particular set of muscles, and on day one I may have very little strength in my bicep, so I curl a very small weight, 1 pound or 10 pounds or kilos or whatever it is, and I feel quite tired. But the next day, right, or 2 days later, after I've had some rest, I can do just a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and as long as I kind of keep on a 2-day a week, 3-day a week schedule, you can see quite linear progress. And you may make leaps at times, but you have a sense, okay, well, what I did yesterday is a foundation, and a linear foundation for what happens today. And creativity, that irrational, sort of more amorphous, slightly chaotic sense, sometimes you sit down and as if out of nowhere, things sort of pour out of you. And other times you sit down and you're kind of beating your head against the wall or the table and really struggling. And so it doesn't have necessarily that linear quality of progress.
No, totally true. And it's like, I think talking both about more mystical, like spiritual experiences and creativity, I think they are very intimate, connected. They are very close to each other, and I think the best ones I've had always came when I least expected it. So it's like, yeah, I mean, the ancients talked about the muse, and I mean, I think there is something to that, and to really allow oneself to be so open that one can. Oftentimes, my ideas that I write about, or if I have begun painting also, like they come to me just like I have to grab them. It's like woo, so they don't slip away. So for me, it has been difficulties with the discipline and scheduling, because I understand that I have to learn that maybe also, and a lot of artists talk about that you have to just sit down, and sometimes it doesn't come anything, but you do it anyway, like a routine. And I am a little bit more like going with the flow always, to really be. When the inspiration is there, I create, and when it's not there, I try to do something else.
Yeah, and I think everybody has to find their own way in that, but certainly, yeah, I have found, and when I do give myself that ritual of practice, it's not about the specific effects that show up every time, but it's laying a foundation for things to come. And so, you know, you're talking about painting, but also writing, and I know you've written a book, the first of a trilogy, and yeah, I'd love to hear you talk about sort of the experience, because we spoke about it, which kind of brought you onto the podcast. It sort of has this mystical other quality, but also is quite a personal story.
It is,
or based on a personal story.
Yes, it is. I have used my life story to create my novel. But it is a novel. It is not a self-biography. I don't promote it as a biography. Because I see that it's so much creativity in it, also. But for me, it's been like I didn't even know that I was going to write the novel until like a year ago. And when I started writing, it came out very fast. So I've been walking around carrying this story within myself for a long, long time. And once the voice inside started like picking on me, like, you have to tell it, you have to tell it. Then it was quite simple to like transcribe it and put it down on paper. So that was really, I was in my flow when I wrote it, really.
And I'm curious about this voice inside that says, you know, you have to tell it, you have to tell it. Was that something that was there for a while, or something that you noticed, as you say, in the last year or so, that really started having more sound and pressure?
That is a quite intimate and personal question that I'm not really sure if I'm honest about, actually, because I think it has been there for a long time, that voice, but didn't really want to come out. So maybe it was like, yeah, I came to the point through a life crisis, maybe, where I just felt, now this story has to come out. And I think that it has been living within me for so long, and that there has been something perhaps a little bit repressed within me with my story that I kept within myself. And then I came to a point where it was just like, it has to be let out. I think it wanted to come out, the story.
And in the creation of the story, is it about the expression? Is it about the learning? Is there a healing process? Is it about getting this out for others and or yourself? What's been the, you know, we can talk about the story itself, but particularly because, as you say, there is this sense that the story was there for a long time, and it was repressed.
Mm.
And at some point, right, a crisis or something then pushes you or brings that out.
Yes, definitely. And I think that is, without sounding like making my story big or something like that, I think it's like I do have a feeling that it can mean something to other people, that it wanted to come out because it can, I think a lot of people can recognize themselves in a lot of things in the story, and also women particularly.
Mm.
Mm. I mean, the book is called Dad, Where Are You? And the title is Alma Mater. And I'm a little bit playing with the concepts there, because Alma Mater it means in Latin, the kind, nourishing mother, sort of. And also it is the expression that we usually use about the school where one has formerly been attending or got one's graduation from, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
If you have gotten to a certain university or so. And in my case, it has been, even though I'm an educated nurse, but I'm not like I don't have a PhD or anything like that. And for me, life has been the school, really.
Mm.
And the subtitle is called Dad, Where Are You? And that has been my search a lot. I have lived a lot with absent fathers, and I was actually born with a father unknown in my records. So, and I decided very early as a young girl that I'm going to find my father. I'm going to set out on this adventure. I'm going to find him, and which I did also. So I think and then it's also through the mystical Christian tradition. I think I also play with the words here a little bit, because it's like, yeah, Dad, where are you? We have been, as a woman and as a human being, I think we all can feel that sometimes we can wonder a little bit, where are you, God? And also in the Christian story, it is very much about that God is the father, and the mother is you can say then the kind and nourishing mother. But what does that mean? And for a woman, what kind of role model is that? I think we have there, and for a modern woman, it's very difficult to relate to it. So it's that's essentially the underlining story.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's very, very rich and very, relevant to where we are, because, and I appreciate your view as a modern woman, but I'm just sort of thinking, like, as a modern man, it speaks to this sense that if we have, I mean, I also grew up without a father present. Now, I knew who he was. It wasn't the best relationship when I was growing up. We developed a much better relationship in my late teens and through my 20s. But so I suppose I could also say, Dad, where are you, in terms of where are you in my life? Yeah. So I certainly recognize that story. And my father, bless him, he just didn't really know how to be a father.
I think that's also what I'm talking about, the absent father. And I think we, like the whole story of Jesus, he came, he was here for a while, and he left. And even though in the, I mean, he's very here still. I have to believe that I believe in God, I have to say that, but I believe in a God that is both within and without. It's a kind of, and I think sometimes that is something that we need to get back to, and so many people can recognize themselves in the absent father. I think that's the kind of society we have created, sort of.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help or nourish anyone, not the men either.
Yeah, exactly. And this idea, because certainly in Christian tradition, there's this sort of all-knowing father who's somewhere out there, and only by grace do we get a touch of that. And as you say, this separation that God is somewhere out there, we're sort of living our miserable and meager existence, and every so often we can have grace bestowed upon us and see the light or experience some of that. And the sense that, I mean, I also think that this kind of notion, because it is very endemic, this notion of a nourishing mother, but because it's not part of it's not really part of the true pantheon or the basis of the religion. Yes, we have Mary, but well, two Marys actually, right? And we have sort of, Mary as a mother who's kind of brings Jesus into the world, but then is absolutely kind of like in the shadows and just kind of like, left, and Mary Magdalene, who plays a role much later, and it does have this sense of, the Mother Mary has this sense of like this, duty to bring life in, and then just be in the background. So you're a mother, and I see that in how we tend to treat the feminine. It's kind of like, we'll just bear this, and then be in the background, be in the shadows. But both of them are very disconnected, right? There's no real sense that either the mother or the father are there really for us in that sense.
No, and I think that it really shows also on how we treat our earth in a way. Because, I mean, if we like boil it down to the ground, we call Earth Mother Earth, don't we? And then we have Father Sky. That's the, and when we see the world how it is now, I mean, with the climate changes and how we have exploited her, really, I think there is really a lot of things to look into that. And in a way, I sometimes feel that it's like the rage of Mother Earth coming out now, like. And me myself as a woman, I have been fighting about with that a lot, because there was a time in my life when I had a lot of rage, and I think any woman can it has its relevance, the anger, because of how society treats us in many ways. And when, I mean, I'm a Swedish woman, I shouldn't complain at all, but you can see how women have it in many other parts. I mean, look at Afghanistan, what they are going through. It hurts me really to think. Yet I have somehow come over that kind of rage within, and there's been a lot of sadness for me for quite a long time now, because it's sad. And also I'm a mother of 3 sons. And I think that has helped me also, because for a while I went into feminism and I went into politics, and I think I had very, very good reasons to that, because you can get that kind of feeling I have to do something. It's really and then I found out, no, that's not either the thing. And I think it has helped me to have 3 sons also, because I see how they are also. It's not easy to be a man in this world either, and they become victims also from this sort of patriarchy that we have created. And I think it's I mean, we have so much man and woman within us, both men and women. And perhaps that is more where we have to start looking. And that's also what many ancient wisdom tradition talk about. So it's kind of talking about timelines and the beginning and end and all of these things. It's like, we perhaps we have to start to really look deeper.
Yeah, what's come up recently in a few episodes here over the last couple of months, that coming from both men and women is this sense of remembering those understandings. And I get a sense from some people, from culture, from society, that we're always progressing, right? There's this notion that, again, maybe it goes back to the like weightlifting, that, well, why would you want to go back to where you were 2 months ago lifting weights? Because you were weaker or could lift less. And so we kind of bring that into our sense of science or spirituality, or connection to the earth, all these things that we have these romantic notions of how things were. And I'm sure it's true that things like life expectancy and disease, right? We've had these amazing discoveries and advances in all that, but at the same time, right, there is this opportunity, as you say, to recognize, well, let's just be honest and real with where we actually are in our relationship to the world, to this planet, to each other, and ultimately to ourselves, right? It all starts there, and not to go back and try to recreate something, but to perhaps integrate an understanding that has always been there. If you look at indigenous peoples around the world, there's a great reverence for the earth and what it provides to them. The reading recently from Joseph Campbell, talking about Native American tribes and how they have respect, and the rituals they show when they are going to slaughter an animal for their food, that how much thanks they give to a particular animal for giving its life and its nourishment to the tribe or the people. And we have that as, I guess we kind of keep that as a passing notion when we say grace, or we say our blessing before food. And it's kind of, if we have it, it's so shortened. It's like, great, thanks, okay, now let's eat, right? Rather than really bringing that awareness, that presence in, of like, wow, it took 3 months for this pumpkin to grow. It took years for this sheep to give it to grow and give its type, or whatever it is, that we really have lost that appreciation, because I live in a city, you live in a city, right? We're so disconnected from where things come from what it takes.
Yes, I think certainly you are right. I mean, for me, gardening has been very important also for understanding life and the cycles and patience, and you learn so much from taking care of a garden and to grow your own food and so on. And I think just exactly what you talk about, like the indigenous, they really have this kind of understanding that you can't exploit the earth, because if you exploit the earth, you destroy her. It's like and I think that is we do that so much with all things. We exploit, and it's the kind of greediness and capitalism and so on that we have like lived under for so long. Industrialization and so on, it has taken technology, everything, it takes us very far, but also that it has a back price to it, really, always. And we have to find new ways of understanding the world and treat it with a little bit more respect, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I think what we're coming up against, and it's being seen in all sorts of ways, and is that there's a particular reservoir of opportunity and resources. And it has, life has a self-sustaining and self-generating aspect to it. And, if we look back, we're talking about adventure, right? If we look back to the explorers of 400, 500 years ago, not to romanticize or demonize them, but it's a fact that there were European explorers who were going out in search of things. Maybe they did it in justification of in the name of God or king or queen, and they certainly did committed atrocities and did terrible things. But it's created the world we live in, right?
Yes.
Good, bad, or indifferent.
Yes.
And because there was less people, there was so much out there, right? You could go to a land in Africa, in Asia, in wherever, and there were forests of trees and resources and minerals, and I'm sure on some level at the time it felt like, wow, what an amazing bounty. We can just take all of this, and there's still more out there that we can explore, and so it created this notion that, well, there is this wonderful resource, and it's here for us. And what we're seeing, I think, as you point out, this industrialization and capitalization, but it's putting that linear sense of availability on what is essentially a circular, cyclical, right? Yes, trees come back. Yes, we have fruits in the summer and fall, but that's also because in the winter and early spring, the trees and the plants must die down, regenerate, and we don't really have an economic or a social system that matches the physical reality of the earth. And yes, there's technology that can grow things in greenhouses and do all these things, but it's having more and more stress and strain. Yes. And I think we're at this critical point where there are many people who feel like, well, technology is absolutely 100% the way forward, and that's it. And I think there are other people who really have this, we have to go back to land and get away with that. And I personally believe that it's some mixture of the two. Technology is a wonderful thing. Yes. We're able to talk to each other right now in different countries through technology, and this goes out to however many people around the globe because of that. But until we learn to reintegrate,
exactly, and like interweave, I think that is it correlates a lot to the integration between East and West. And man, what we call man and woman, yin and yang, and so on. It's the irrational with the rational, and order and chaos, and all of it. It's like I have a son who is studying engineering, computer technology, and he wants to become a programmer. And we have very interesting talks, because we are very I'm very like irrational and more feminine and creative in my way, and he's creative in his way, but he's more into the technology. And I think that if we can really wed those both kind of thinking. And the most important for me, when I talk to him, for example, as his mother, and the kind of work that he's going to do, I feel very much the importance of sowing a seed of like love and respect for all things, because so quickly when the mind gets, we are very smart people, and there are very smart people in the technology world. And how do we use that? That is the thing. What is it we are creating? Are we still going to create just to exploit and to win and to gain and to conquer and whatever? Or are we going to use this mind together with the heart to create something better than we have been able to do before? And I think that is really where we have to to find the and that is tricky, because I mean, who knows what is best? Who knows what is good? Who knows what is? But I think somehow intuitively, that's what I talk about, because the heart and intuition knows when something is not good and when something is. And as long as we don't allow that part to be a part of the academic world and all of it, it's just going to be mind-based. It's not going to come from heart and love. And I think it has been. For a long time, a separation there that has caused so much pain.
Yeah, I know when we spoke when we first met, this idea, because I know you're very interested in the sort of spirituality of East and West and the crossroads of that, and I suppose maybe we are at the crossroads. There is an opportunity for us to be at the crossroads as well, as you say, with the head and heart, because in my personal opinion is that without that, it's like a human body that has a mind and no heart, it will die. Obviously, because there's nothing pumping blood through it to give oxygen and whatever to the mind, and similarly, body with heart and no mind it's not going to do very much. No. And so, like, just looking at that very, very plainly on a biological basis, right? It's quite obvious, and yet we do have this sense of, like in the academic world, that there is there's only one thing that we need, and it just seems to really. It just seems to really like ignore what's obvious and also what's available.
I think for me, it's like the child within me just wants to like, because I mean, we all know that every like really new invention, really new creation, and something revelatory, wonderful and lovely, it often or nearly always comes from perhaps a mistake or something very irrational, something that we dare to try something that nobody ever did before, and all the rest might say that this is totally stupid, don't do that, that is like, whoa. And yet from there maybe there comes something that is totally fantastic. And I think that is oftentimes in nature science and so on, it's always like everything has to be proven, but if it's already proven before we try it, then how can it be? I mean, so yeah, we have to dare a little bit more to try and question what we already know, like
I think that's such a valuable awareness. We kind of forget that everything that we have in this world was just created by somebody, really no smarter than anybody else. They just came up with things in a slightly different way, and that the things that change, they had to be completely different, and you cannot do that by following exactly what came before.
Oh, exactly. That's I think that's very, and that is a tricky place to live from, because I have perceived that with myself oftentimes, that I am difficult to place in a box or because I don't like it. I don't want to be like that. I like to be in a space where I can identify with nearly anything, and that makes it a bit tricky to place me for people sometimes, and even for myself sometimes, because I like to live from a place where I'm a little bit surprised every day about myself.
I think I've certainly learned to follow that myself, and all the better for it, because we are a magnitude, a multitude, a universal. We could be anything, and I think the more we start to acknowledge that, and allow that in ourselves, that, as you say, then it goes to a seeking. We can seek outside to say, well, I was speaking to somebody who was on the show, Kello Stone, who, I can't remember what, episode 20 or something. And he was talking about, because he'd written a book, he's a sociology professor, and he'd written a book about sort of the adventure of self, particularly in this kind of age of the selfie, right? So it's kind of like we're in this kind of like, look at me in a particular frame, and yet what are we exploring about ourselves? And he's quite creative and had tried a bunch of things. He was making films, was an actor, doing voice work, decided he was doing improvisation comedy, decided that he was really interested in puppets. And so he started making puppets and making movies with puppets and using them on stage. And just by chance, this came about, this discovery. Wow, I love working with puppets. And somebody said to him, "Oh, you should try what is it? Some type of knitting, crochet." Right? It's a particular type of knitting yarn. And he said he tried it, and within a couple of weeks, a couple of months, he said he hated it.
Okay.
Right. But it's beautiful to say, well, let me just try this thing, because I may like it, I may not. Right. And I don't know if I'm good at it. I may actually be very good at it. I mean, it's not like he took a test and somebody said, "Oh, you should go into puppets." Right. Where your all your charts show puppets. Right. That wasn't the case. It was by an exploration, by seeking something both without, I think, and within, that we can stumble across something. We may have a sense of something, writing or music or painting or dance or cooking or games or whatever it is that we know, but we're a little scared to go for. Right. Yeah. So that's one thing. And then there's the things that we have no idea about, and we give that a go, and we either find that we really do have an interest and talent for it, or we say, "Wow, I don't want anything to do with this. I really respect all the other people who do it, and good for them, but it's not for me."
Yes, I think we should dare much more to try things like that. And also to teach our children that they are allowed to do that, to explore different things and different way of thinking, and that it's not the end of the world if it shows that this was not good, or this was not for me, or to be more open in that way. I think that is really, I kind of Astrid Lindgren, the Swedish author for children's books.
I don't, but
no, but she has created a character called Pippi Longstocking, who is
right, of course, yeah.
And she has kind of been my role model a lot in life, because it's like and she has this way of seeing things that I have never done this before, so I'm probably good at it.
Oh, right.
I say that with a little kind of humor and humility, because I don't think that about myself, but I try to plant that seed in myself always when I do something like Pippi Longstocking, and then it's like, okay, I can try this, and if it doesn't work out, then I try to tell myself, okay, I not to be too hard on myself when it didn't work out. So, but it's not easy, but I think that is a good place to try to live from, at least.
Well, I think what's interesting, because I do work in consciousness, and there's sort of ancient understandings of consciousness that go to sort of the spiritual and mystical traditions, and then there are modern understandings of consciousness through research scientists and neuroscience and all these. And like many things in life right now, we're actually seeing that they meet. Like in quantum mechanics, how the understanding of things on the quantum world actually is very consistent with what the ancients thought about how energy and vibration worked. Yes. And similarly around consciousness, how the alchemists and magicians and the seekers and the mystics of hundreds and thousands of years ago is matching what is understood in neuroscience now at the cutting edge. And
Yes,
it does, and it does go to this sense because it shows up in sports, in high level performance. It is the basis of a lot of coaching, which is, well, if you believe in something, then you are halfway to creating it, right?
Yeah, I think that's really the ability to visualize things and to really imagination. It's like you said before, everything essentially that exists here, that is solid, that is at least our perception of it as solid, it's like it's an idea.
Yeah,
we have to remember that always, that this thing is here, it's an idea from the beginning. And when one starts to live from that place, life gets quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly spoken about in mystical books that everything you see, every physical thing, a computer, a pen, a phone, a glass, a chair, began as an idea in somebody's mind.
Yeah.
So that's imagination, that's creativity. You have to actually imagine it before you create it.
Exactly, and that is also a proof where rationality and irrationality can meet. That is really easy to understand. That okay, yeah, it's right. This was someone's imagination once, and now it's here, and it's, so yeah, and I think that's and if John Lennon said it too. I think if we can imagine. The more people who imagine good things, and sooner or later it's going to happen.
And I think what I want to bring in to that is, because you mentioned it, there's a slightly paradoxical, almost counterintuitive sense, because there is this idea that if we imagine it, we can create it. However, there is also an arrogance in that, because it is not just imagining that creates it. And there has to be, in my experience, a counterbalance of some humility that, in fact, I may not create it. I may not have any ability to create it. It may not happen at all. So we're in this sort of slightly weird, irrational world where I can 100% imagine what it is I want to create or choose to create in my life, a podcast, a recipe, a trip around the world, and also be in the awareness that may not happen at all.
Yes, that's so essential. And like you said, that there has to be, we began talking about that God is within and God is without, but we are not gods. But it's like, my understanding of it, at least, is that there is some sort of collective consciousness and some kind of God without, that is like connected to the whole, and then it's my own imagination and me, and just because I imagine one thing, it's not, like you say, necessarily going to happen. But that doesn't prevent me from continuing imagining things. It's like I think it's very dangerous to start to live from a place and think that whatever I think is going to happen. That's not how it works. It's, life will show us that again and again and again anyway. And but still, there is this the fact that ideas come true sometimes, and I have a certain understanding that if many enough people imagine the same thing. Because essentially that is what is, I think, also, this is getting a little bit deep, isn't it? I think there is a Hopi proverb that says that the storytellers rule the world. And I was, when I heard that the first time, it was really like, yeah, what? Is that really true? And then what sort of stories is it then that rule the world? That's what we have to ask ourselves. What are the stories that we can look at the world and see how it looks? And if the world is is ruled by stories, then perhaps it's time that we together create new stories and understand how important the story is. The idea and the storyline that lies underneath everything that we often, it's even unconscious, we just live from it because it's a place where for generations has been so solid that we don't even see that we have a certain idea or a certain story running.
Yeah, I mean, I was, I think I mentioned to you, I just did a workshop on this around, we have a particular individual story and we have an opportunity to reframe, to recreate that. And I was using the context of myth to do that. But I love that sense. Yeah, I hadn't heard that from the Hopis, that the storytellers rule the world, but it reminds me immediately as you say it that what is it? I mean, there is that sense that the victors write the history books, right? So a set of events happens, but whoever, particularly, I mean, I guess that comes from battles and empires and things, but they get to tell the story, right? And we can, there is this sense. I don't really want to get into the specifics of it, but I mean, you can see it actually in all sorts of ways. I mean, you could look at the sort of current global situation, but this is as true for the pandemic as it is for climate, as it is for our economic system, as it is for our political system. There is a story, there is a narrative. Now, there may be competing narratives, for sure. There may be 2, there may be 10,000. Right, competing narratives about what is happening, and for most things, it's probably much closer to 10,000, although there are predominant ones. And a narrative, a story, because I was reading an article from a journalist who was talking about somebody that he respected, who he called an old school journalist, and what did that mean? That meant somebody who, for all his or her intentions, recognize that it is impossible to tell an objective story, which is the ideal of journalism, but that it is impossible. So you try to get both sides of the story, or however many sides of the story there are, and present them as objectively as possible, knowing that that's not possible. And so I think that we do have these narratives, and what I see, and you can see this that is coming in from all sorts of ways. I mean, I really respect Russell Brand for what he is doing about peeling back the layer on who's telling a story, which corporation, which politician, what is really behind a particular story. Because we hear a story, and we lead busy lives, and we read a newspaper article, or we see a TV, or we talk to a friend, right? And we hear something, but we all have there's a reason behind that. I think there's something really interesting, and one of the things I'm coming to in my own life, and the people that I want to work with, is telling a new story that connects to heart, and say, well, let's create a new story for who we are as individuals, for a society that is based on our humanness, our heart, not some naive notion that, oh, we'll all just be happy, right? There's hardship and challenge, but that has a focus and intention that is coming from that place.
Yes, I think, and also, like, for me, very important, the everybody's right to be. Everybody's right to be oneself. I mean, there are really as many ways to do something good for another person, or for Earth, or for whatever, as there are people. And we so often lock ourselves into a certain group's way of seeing things, and I think it's really I think to live from the heart means to be passionate about what one is doing, and that is I think when one is really happy and in flow, and I've had certain times in my life when I felt that I could do anything nearly. I felt really like strong, and that has always been when I was very in my flow, doing the thing that I loved to do. And so I think that individualism in relation to the whole picture is something that is also very good to kind of promote, because people tend to blossom when they get to do what they love.
Yeah, and that is, it goes back to what we started with, this idea of cultivating space for that, because in my own experience and what I see in the world around, whether through social media, whether through corporate advertising and marketing, is that often we are shown, suggested, heavily influenced in what's possible for us, and how to be something. I saw a post from, I was a comedian, I think, who was talking about how social media in particular was killing off the quirkiness of us, because it shows you, okay, through this very these algorithms and everything, it's like, this is how to be accepted, this is how to be as popular or whatever as possible. And yeah, there's definitely is creativity in various social medias, Instagram and YouTube, and putting things out there and putting your own expression out. But it is seemingly quite anodized, kind of it kind of cuts off the edges, so it kind of all fits within a kind of close center, rather than really encouraging and allowing.
Yeah.
And that's cool. That's its profit model. I don't, they can do what they want, but I think there's something outside of that and it goes to that seeking, right? I mean, if I go to Instagram for my creativity, well, of course it's giving my agency over to Instagram, and it's a useful platform, and good for them for creating it and allowing it. But that doesn't determine what's possible for me, and it actually takes away, because I'm then looking, oh well, these people did these things and put things in this particular way, and I can see it, how even how I do it for this podcast. It's like, okay, what's going to be popular that somebody's going to click on and see, and da-da-da. And there's this opportunity to really kind of go to that irrational space of, I'm not sure what's going to happen, and I'm not sure how that's going to be received, or how I'm going to be in a particular space.
Yes, totally. I think also that's the danger with social media and so on. I think I like it in a way, but also to really draw the best of it, you have to be a quite conscious person, I think. Because if you are not, and if you care very much about what other people think, and you just want, like you say, follow the popular, you're going to there is a certain stream there that just takes you to places. And those places might not always be what you need, to feel better, or to develop or grow or whatever. So it's like it is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, what I come back to, because I think we could sort of go down that, but I actually don't want to. I want to come back to you and me and ourselves, because as you say, social media will take you on a stream, and it has a business model, it has a particular intention and focus, and that's cool. No disrespect. I use it. I can swim in that stream, but there is this opportunity, which is what we started with, this opportunity of searching, of seeking, which goes inside in particular, where we don't actually know what we're going to find. Nice. And there is it goes to the heart of this podcast, the adventure itself, and what you're bringing in, the seeking, the
Yes.
searching, sometimes we don't even know what we're searching for. It's like this, it's an intangible notion, rather than I'm going searching for, gold in this river or in this, mountain, or, what that kind of tangible thing. It's, I'm going searching for something that is the expression of my heart, and I won't know it until after I've expressed it.
Yeah, that's it. Yes. Yes. And sometimes it's going to take many years. What you understand now might not be what you understand in 10 years or in 20 or whatever. I mean, it's like there are always so many layers to everything. I think.
Yeah, you were talking, it might have been before we got started, this idea that the path is just appearing.
Yeah.
We have an assumption kind of in our rational mind that the path is here. I can see it. Okay, I step here. If I step off of it, the grass is higher, the rocks are there or something. And in this other world, the path is appearing as we each step into the unknown.
Yes, it's created all the time. Yes.
Cool. I think yeah, there's a nice kind of like edge to that. So of unknown.
Yeah.
I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Carina.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here. And